Friends, I'm going to continue to launch into our particular topic today. And I'm realizing that most of us who are sitting around discussing are not in the age bracket of that which we want to address today in terms of young adults. But it raises the question for us, and that is, we are the permission givers. We are the ones who create the safe place for these discussions to happen. So I'm raising this right now. Very good for us to have this conversation ourselves and about where we are at. But let's put our heads together and think who we need to invite. And let's have this conversation with young adults and young adults pastors and so on in, let's say, 2 weeks' time. And we invite folk into that space. I also think some of the other topics we're dealing with, we need to come back to again, simply because there are other people who can benefit from further development in that space. One of the questions would be, how do we cope with churches going back? And Egbert was talking about that. So how do we cope with churches going back, and how are we managing that and learning from that? So there are those kinds of topics that I think will be helpful for us to deal with. But just quickly, let's go around the room. Our topic for today is, how do we reach young adults, minister to young adults in the season? Let's just hear 1 or 2 sentences from each of us around what are your thoughts about this? What are the questions we need to raise? We can talk about who we invite towards the end of our conversation today. Then I've got some input that'll engage us in this space. But let's just hear from each of us. Young adults ministry, what is our thinking of thoughts about this? Just a few sentences each on this. Egbert, you're on the top left screen. You go first.
I think what is true is that you don't have to be in the same age group to have an impact. I think that is a proven fact through research. But you have to have at least a leader in that same group that you can mentor to make an impact. So my observation is that with certain groups, you can be quite impactful. And quite frankly, I've noticed that with the black Xhosa-speaking young people, I'm talking 19s, 18s, 20s, it seems that I can relate better to them than with white people, white youngsters. So it's interesting how, the social making or how you approach people is different, and the expectations from their side. But what I do realize is that it's very hard to get young people in a kind of traditional service with a liturgy that we have all come used to in a certain degree. However, other opportunities which I have seen and noticed with all population groups is through marriage preparation. That's certainly an area where I think pastors can make a big impact. And then you have to be there where they are. You can't expect them going to come to the church. You have to reach young people differently. And we have some young pastors in our denomination who've succeeded in, and maybe there's names we can talk about later to call them to participate, using Instagram for Bible studies. It's something that I just don't get my head around, but it works for them. And youth networks. So it's not an easy topic, but I believe that the schools, the high schools, is a very fertile environment for churches to be involved. Last sentence is in the Eastern Cape or in Port Elizabeth area. Most schools says they can't get pastors to come to their schools. They invite them to come and participate and open on Mondays and have groups during breaks, but the pastors don't come. So there are opportunities which a church is not getting to.
Thank you, Egbert. Grateful for that. That's very good insights. Bill, you're next on my screen. Jump in there. What are your thoughts in this space?
I'll mute myself. Well, Egbert, can I just start off by saying my experience, my own personal experience, is opposite to yours, because when I tried to involve the Wesley Guild in some activities at the church, it flopped. I got nowhere. Involving the white youth group in the activities, In fact, we have another meeting tomorrow with them to pack meals for poor people. So for some reason, I'm having the opposite experience to what you're having. But on the high school, on the schools, high schools, I'm talking mainly, we not me, but our youth worker, was Owen Dominey, the ex-YFC person. He's running Alpha in one of the, or he was before the lockdown. He was running Alpha at a high school, and he was doing some SCAs in another one, Cambridge. Yeah, he was Cambridge High. He was doing SCA there, and my senior pastor's senior minister aim is to aim for young adults. That's why we brought on Owen as our youth and young adults and families. It's a long title, but Andrew wants to focus on the young adults and the families. That's where we are at this moment. So that's my tuppence worth.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Interesting and valuable contribution. Duncan. Duncan?
Sorry, I would echo what Ahmed has said about, trying to engage young people through Instagram and stuff like that. I had an Instagram account which I tried to run, and I've given up now. I've backed out of that space because the technology defeated me. I have to confess, but that's the space that they're working in. Facebook is for people of our generation, so I think that, going back to what I said in my introduction, I think that the opportunity to host conversations around white supremacy and Black Lives Matter and gender-based violence is a real opportunity for us to grab, because young people want to talk about the real issues. They want to talk about the elephants in the room. They don't want, platitudes. They don't want to skirt around the issues. So my sense is, when you put that subject up, we're going to talk about white supremacy. I'm reading a book at the moment entitled "Can White People Be Saved?" Let's jump into the real sort of like contentious issues. Then the young people come, and we can really engage them. But we've got to engage them in a way where we don't come with answers, but we come open, we come humble, we come curious to learn, to engage, to see what we haven't seen. I'm very conscious of my status. I'm an old white male, and the most important thing to do at this stage is to listen intently and try to get under the skin of people who are struggling and trying to express themselves. And and I think we need resilience for this. I need to say that you need resilience to not be defensive. You need resilience. You need to. I think it's more. I find this is more demanding in terms of what it means to be a follower of Jesus than anything else. To know who I am in Christ, and so not to be defensive, not to take offense, but to be listening intently and curiously and having these conversations. And I think that's a place of like real engagement with young people. That's what they want to talk about.
Thanks, Duncan. As always, hugely insightful. Thank you for that. Colin, you're next on my screen, so you're up.
Yeah, I think that, again, pale and grey, the older concepts, but in years ago, in terms of doing youth work and also trying to still have a mind for young people. Sorry, I've got a dog that's barking at the grass cutters outside. and just trying to work out what is God saying to the generation of young people today. And it is about some of the issues in terms of Black Lives Matter. I'm on the WhatsApp group for the teenage youth group, and there have been lots of discussions. It was about a week ago. This week would have been our school holiday club, with a lot of them being leaders at the holiday club for junior school children. So those are, and they were just lamenting that fact. But the chap we've got helping to lead the youth was giving some insights in terms of, because I think we were using the SU theme about superheroes. And so we were now talking about Mark's superheroes and what we will do next year. Okay, so there was a real generation for that. And then our youth Bible study has kept itself going through Zoom meetings through this time, which has also been the young adults group, and that's also been very helpful. But they've maintained that kind of contact where some of the more adult Bible studies perhaps have done it in a different way, just through messages on WhatsApp rather than Zoom meetings. And it's all based on technology and what is available. But I think it is just being there for the young adults of today, listening and hearing and just discerning what God is saying in so many different ways. But yeah, we'll just, it's an ongoing process, and we don't have all the answers, but we know that God does, so we keep on trusting in Him.
Thank you. Thanks, Colin. Bless you for that. Paul, you're next on my screen.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I don't have, that much work with the youth, and one of the things that my wife and I go into the informal settlement that's close by us. We used to go every Friday afternoon and mentor, disciple young people, and we're trying to figure out, since it's been so long, we're trying to figure out how we could maybe continue that through WhatsApp and have that be a viable option. There, in the parish that I'm in, St. Martin's in Rosebank, it's an interesting thing, and this is like a real long-term planning. But years ago, the young families, families with very young kids, they decided that they weren't going to go to the morning service, but they all went to the evening service and brought all of their little kids with them. And those kids grew up together. And now that they're teenagers, they all stick together. So it's actually quite a big group who has known each other for years. So I just thought, sometimes we're trying to get them to work together as teenagers when maybe it's easier when they're children, and then just think long term, how do we keep them together so that they really like being together. Of course, one of the hard things is when someone new comes in, it's a little hard to break into that clique. But so that's kind of what I've seen from my side regards to youth.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Fiona, you're next on my screen. You're up.
Just unmuting myself. Yes, so where does one start? I did mention last week the Alternative Church Coffee Connect that we are meeting with, and thanks, Bill. And it's been quite helpful, not every single Wednesday, but alternating Wednesdays. And I post the Zoom invite on the WhatsApp group that I send out with my devotions on a certain day. So that's the one thing that's working. Just to say, taking those key issues that are pertinent to our context here. I like the elephants in the room idea. COVID-19, we have chatted about that. The gender-based violence, and of course Black Lives Matter or white supremacy. Those certainly could be topics that could be used for discussion. I was trying to think of some other way of making life more interesting for the youth. We don't have lots of youth. We've got some young adults and some single folk that are sort of 35 to 45 age group. So I was looking at The Amazing Race. We've watched The Amazing Race on TV. I'm sure some of us know what that storyline is. And I haven't done it, but I'm toying with the idea of doing a virtual Amazing Race using Google Maps as the means that we go to the different places. And I was thinking of maybe taking one of Paul's journeys, so taking a Christian framework and looking at the journey and the different places he went to and trying to find out, can we find out what the Colosseum looks like in Rome? Getting a Google Map picture of the front of the Colosseum in Rome, for example. Is there something that you could ask as a question and they answer the question, the clue is something there, they answer the question and they get certain points so they could go right around the whole world. One could use a lot of different ideas. So this is the embryo. I haven't actually teased it out, but it was an idea that came to me yesterday when I was trying to think of how do I engage with the youth. So maybe one of you might be even cleverer than me to think of a way of doing this, but why not? Do something interesting like that. And then also I get from Nicky Gumbel, he does Bible in 1 year. I think maybe some of you know those devotions. And yesterday's consideration was looking at a UK retail chain commissioned a survey by a team of psychologists, and their key customer demographic were millennials born between 1981 and early 2000s, also known as Generation Y. So they interviewed 800 people. This is obviously a British survey they did. They interviewed 800 people, and of that group, most of them live alone, and more of them living alone than ever in our recorded social history. So on average, this group spends 6.5 hours a day on social media, which comes back to what Duncan was saying in relation to Instagram. So 6.5 hours on social media a day, that's a lot of time. But they have a great sense of loneliness. So there's a sense of being alone. And I think it's even more exacerbated now with this COVID-19 situation that we find ourselves in. So the one-on-one, maybe, I think us inviting Zoom meetings might be a way of doing this, but it's not as personal as physically being in the same room as somebody. So I was just interested that for them, friendships, not so much marriage, is a key conversation point, but friendship, key friendships. So I don't know if that is helpful.
Thank you, Fiona. I think that Nicky goes on, I'm doing those devotions, as you know, through the year. And he says, marriage is temporary. Friendships are eternal. And I just thought that was an insightful thing to say, that friendships is what these millennials have brought again to us. The baby boomers who are very, into the world with a lot of consumerism. Whilst the millennials want the comforts, they really want the relationships. So that's key. And I think the theme that's coming through these is how do we connect folks together? I want to just affirm Paul Siaki before I come to you, Duncan. I just want to come back and affirm Paul Siaki. Paul and Barbara have created 3 children. The youngest of the children is very creative in creating opportunities for family engagement. So I don't know if you've seen on Facebook, but the idea of having a putt-putt tournament throughout the entire house and the garden is an idea for family fun together, which our family had a table tennis round robin championships, and we had that together. But I just wanted to affirm the Siakis, having fun together with your young adults. I mean, it's just awesome, Father's Day, just having fun together. What we did on Father's Day is that our daughters came with the idea of reenacting old photographs. So we went through all the photograph albums from 25 years ago, fished out 10 of photographs and reenacted those photographs and had a huge amount of fun together. And I remember what Trevor Hudson says, the greatest witness we can be to our children and our young adult children is to be fun to live with. And I want to affirm Paul and Barbara, just being parents that are fun to be with, that's a great gift, that it's not all just serious, it's having some fun. And Fiona harder after that. Duncan, we're going to go to you and then to Siegfried if you'd like to make some comments. Duncan?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what Fiona said about this amazing race. It sounds intriguing, Fiona. I'd love to hear how that works out. But I forget who it was. It was somebody who was talking about the role that Google can play in disciple making, where you sort of give people some questions, and so where was the Colosseum, or it's almost like a pub quiz type of thing. And you say, well, ask Google. And I remember the illustration that I think was used was they were doing a Bible study on John the Baptist, and the question was, well, who is John the Baptist? I said, well, you got smartphones, get them out, ask Google. Google knows who John the Baptist is. You don't need a theological degree. You don't need a whole tome of stuff. You just need Google, and actually you can find out a whole lot and push people to do some research and not just expect to be spoon-fed. So I just wanted to check that out. Watch with interest, Fiona, to see how this amazing race works out.
Thank you, Duncan. Siegfried, do you want to add into the equation?
Just following up on Duncan with Google and internet, just a quick story to share. 2 years ago, I was in Port Elizabeth at the university there. I spent a week with students after writing their exams. They were taken to a conference center where they spend time before they all go home, just to kind of encourage them. And some, they come from families that are not believers. But on that last day, on a Sunday evening, I was so intrigued by just watching and observing them. They were very mixed. These were not black, or they were very mixed young people. And the leader will announce a hymn, and it'll give them a minute to find the hymn on Google. And they'll all sing from their smartphones. And then secondly, while they sing, they are making videos of themselves. At the end of the service, even someone who was not in the service will enjoy the service, because I don't know how they put together these videos and send them around. So those are young people for you. But I just want to add to what has been said here, which is very, very helpful. Last year, I did some research on how to work with young people. And my focus was 25 to 35. A book that really helped me, if you're into reading, it's Millennials in Ministry. It was published in 2014. The name of the author is Jolene. Sorry, I can't pronounce the surname. It's Erlacher. It doesn't read anything like Zulu, so please forgive me. But with my own experience of journeying with young people and reading this book, there are four words that I just want to share here with you. And I want to take a slight different angle, because I want to encourage you who are not young, like myself. Sometimes we beat ourselves very hard, not knowing what to do. But I've learned from the book and from my own experience that young people, they are not perfect, but the first word that describes them is on authenticity. They are very genuine, they're very authentic. They don't want to beat about the bushes. The kind of questions that young people ask are not the questions that when I was young I would raise and ask. Even now, I still find it very difficult to ask some really very deep questions in terms of matters of life. But young people, because they are serious and they want to be genuine, they will ask those questions. Authenticity. Number two, relational. You know, they want to build trust, and they want to really nurture this thing of relational. I think this goes very in line with what Fiona was saying about key friendships. Mm-hmm. So relational for them, it means a lot. And together with that, it's family. They want to see ministry as family, not like us when you go to church, do the stuff, and come back. But in discipling young people, for them, they see the ministry, people in the ministry, whether teams or staff in the office or workers or pastors, as part of family. And lastly, we all know what's the meaning of this word, listen. Not just to hear words, but if young people have a sense that you are not listening to them, you have lost them. But they do want to be listened to. They want you to be there fully for them. Now, lastly, just to add in these 4 words, while they spend time on smartphones and these people, I've got a son here who's 23 years old. You go to his room, he's got 3 screens, he's working on 3 screens at the same time. And I look at him and all what I can do is just shake my head, because I don't know how you can do that. But while they are like that, you know, they're into internet, they're into Google, they're into Instagram and so on, etc. But these 4, and that's where I come in to encourage us who are older, that as long as we are genuine with them, we will make our way in their hearts. That's all from me, Chris.
Right, thank you, Siegfried. Useful and insightful stuff. I'm just writing notes here because that was so helpful. One of the things that I'm indebted to my wife for, of the many, many things, is we read a book called How to Talk So Your Children Will Listen, and How to Listen So Your Children Will Talk. And that has shaped the way in which we engage with our children. And it has permeated right the way through to adulthood for them. And the big thing is to shut up and listen. And one of the things in gender-based violence and so on is that us men need to shut up and listen and hear not just the words, but what is behind the words, and create a safe place, not only for women to be able to speak, but for our children and our young people to be able to speak without feeling that they are stopped, you know, creating a safe place for truth and authenticity. I like that word so much. Yeah, it's a good one. Folks, I'm aware that time is coming to an end, but I wanted to just say that if we can, I'd like to draw this in and put this into wording. If you can send me the links or whatever else you've got in that space and ideas, and I'll put that into an email, put it on Facebook as well, and make this link available. But I really would like to offer something, and I've asked Kevin to perhaps join us for this particular thing, because he's put together a particular thing. I'm going to diminish this. Let's get this out the way. How to reach and disciple young adults. And so Kevin put this together, and I've asked him to think about this. Now, the question that he raises: what is a young adult? Why is a young adult ministry important? What does the young adult ministry look like in the strategy of Jesus? And then he looks at each of these things. So I'm going to then invite him to be with us and ask, how do we reach this? So I'm not going to share any further with you, because it would be really useful for us to have Kevin involved. I tried to get him today, but his laptop was stolen. And during lockdown, he couldn't get it replaced. So he's struggling to get the Coffee Chat Connect up and running and all that kind of stuff. And so you'll see that he's taken the website down. But I think that that'll be a really useful presentation. Now, he's done this for me at the University of Pretoria a couple of times, and this material is useful, and we can let you have some of the stuff to do. This is part of what Fresh Africa is putting into their new curriculum, and it's around seeing contextual ways. And I just think, Kevin was helpful. He was my young adults pastor for a number of years, and was part-time with us and part-time at the local schools. But I'm not saying Kevin is the only one, but Kevin has been innovative in this space, and I'd like to include him. But now, I'm going to stop the recording, but I'd like us to brainstorm. I'm going to stop the recording now. So thank you for those who've participated there.